Hi guys, Ancient Warrior, welcome back to Prepping in Free America. If you like what you hear here, hit the subscribe button. If you want to be the first kid on your block to know what craziness I'm talking about next, hit the bell icon with all. Mother Nature's been playing with us the last few days. Last week it rained for every day for 6 days. Yesterday it sprinkled nicely for about an hour or two. Today they say we got heavy storms coming. So I'm trying to get these videos done just in case. You know, I'm one of those just in case type guys. Let's go back to talking more about the people I believe to be the godparents of the modern day preppers. Now, there was a guy, and I first remember reading about him back in the, I want to say the mid-1970s, in a publication called Mother Earth News. And for those of you, before you start thinking, oh, he's a hippie. Nope, never was. I just agree with that lifestyle. I don't agree with their political views, but I do agree with the gardening and, you know, raising what you need. Let's give you an idea of, now we're going to talk about a guy named Jules Gervais. And Jules is another one of those people who I truly believe, like Momofuku Ando, Jules Gervais is a genius. Was a genius. Now, he was a young man and we've already lost him, but we're going to talk about what he brought to the table. What he left on the table. Now, Jules Gervais and his children lived out in Pasadena, California. Now everybody's aware of how crazy California is these days. Hell, California's, they're nuts out there. They don't, you know, I was just talking to a couple last night at work. They're headed to Missouri. He's in the Army and he was stationed out in California. And the man actually looked at me and said, thank God that they transferred him to Missouri, because he couldn't stand being out there with those people any longer. His wife was homeschooling the kids because of what they were teaching, and he didn't want his kids to go to school every day. His kids would go in the schoolyard through a gate manned by a cop, and all around the outer edge of the school's area there were tents of the homeless, travel trailers, RVs of various shapes, forms from various places around the country. He didn't want his kids growing up that way. Jules Gervais, back in the 70s, when I first started reading about him, started telling people the food supply the way the country's growing, the present day farmers could not keep up with supply and demand. You're going to need to grow a few things on your own. In Pasadena, Jules Gervais took out his grass and planted vegetables. In his backyard, he raised chickens. He literally was producing 6,000 pounds of food a year off of what he was doing. He had fruit trees. California's prime setting for oranges and all kinds of fruits. Oranges, limes, avocados. And he would always take clippings from his neighbors and stuff and turn it into mulch and use it on his garden. Well, the state of California, being what it is, a group of lunatics, decided that that was not the way of life that he should be doing for his children. They flat made his life miserable out there in Pasadena. So he uprooted his family and moved them to Florida, where that would be an acceptable way of life, and continued to do his homestead gardening in his yard. My article doesn't say where in Florida he moved to, but it did say he passed away a few years ago. What did he leave on the table? He proved what a lot of us has always said, that you don't need to have, hundreds and thousands of acres. All you need is just a little space where you can plant enough to feed your family. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Jules Gervais left us a heck of a blueprint of things we can do in our yards. Depending on where you live, if you're in communist controlled country, or you're living in a freedom-loving place like Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, you can turn your whole yard into a garden if you want. Just remember, folks, the day's coming when this is going to be necessity. I always laughed at my grandparents. My grandparents had a garden. Now, we had a big backyard. Actually, they had about 50 acres of land. So Grandma and Grandpa always had, pretty much a half acre that they turned into a garden every year. And I loved it. I loved getting out there and digging in the garden and playing in the dirt. I should have become a farmer, but I didn't see a future in that. Shows you how stupid young boys are. To this day, I think back to all the great food we had. My grandmother could cook. Oh, and by the way, there were no such things as microwaves. She actually put things on a stove and cooked them that way. We ate lots of bacon grease. You know, my grandmother take green beans and put chunks of bacon in with it and cook it for a while. And it was the best meal. Do you know what makes a meal even better? When you or your spouse, your significant other, or the kids, you know, kids like to get involved too. You go out and you pick fresh tomatoes, cucumbers, you get a few fresh onions, and you take the cucumbers, slice them fairly thin, get the onions and slice them, get some vinegar, white or apple cider, either one, and you pour it on top of your cucumbers and onions. You seal it up, put it in the refrigerator, and let it sit for a few hours. Folks, that's a meal fit for a king. And it's a meal that's better than what a president should be allowed to eat if they're advocating some of the crap that's going on these days. What did Jules Gervais bring to the table? He taught us a way around these problems. Now, there's a guy who's got a podcast, and I can't remember his name right offhand. He talks about guerrilla gardening in these areas where they don't allow vegetables to be grown. And I think that's a good idea too. If you gotta hide it, hide it. You know, I was laughing the other day. A lady looked at me in my front yard, and she said, "You need to get those weeds out of there." And I looked over and said, "What weeds are you talking about?" She said, "The big tall green ones." I said, "Ma'am, those are not weeds. That's garlic." And she looked at me and she said, "You grow garlic?" And I said, "Yeah, somebody's got to." I'm trying to grow enough garlic so that some of my plants go to seed. I'm also growing enough onions, and some of my onion plants are going to go to seed. Folks, it doesn't take much work. I'm living proof. It doesn't take much work to make things go good. So, with that being said, remember, it's better to have this stuff and not need it than need it and not have it. I'm the Ancient Warrior, and we're out.